Growing up under the care of Granny Goodness was never easy for Barda. Because of the advanced New Gods technology employed on Apocalypse, Barda could be beaten, burned, and bled, only for her to be restored to her normal self, free of scars, blemishes, and marks of somebody who has been in battle for their entire life. Yet Granny always kept a special mirror that every once in a while she'd take Barda, or others in her care, in front of. The mirror had a special property that was able to look past a person's exterior and see beyond all the surgeries and technology that made them look beautiful. The mirror was important to Granny, for it showed Barda and the others that no matter how good they looked on the outside, on the inside, deep down, they would always be hers. Hey guys, thanks for checking out part 2 of my Big Barda origins and bio. If you haven't seen part 1, you can do so by clicking on the little button up here. And if you have seen it, be sure to subscribe to our channel and check out our Patreon page. Thanks for watching and enjoy. Following Barda's time with the Justice League, her and her husband, Scott Free, purchased a home in Connecticut, both still active adventurers willing to help out their friends and allies when called upon. In that spirit, Barda would join a rescue mission to save Supergirl from Darkseid. Her and a number of heroes invaded Apocalypse, where she came into conflict with her former comrades, the Female Furies, battling them at the side of Wonder Woman. Barda was later once again called upon by Wonder Woman to face a powerful villain called Circe, along with dozens of other female superheroes. During that battle, the New God encountered another female Fury from Apocalypse named Knockout, who Barda bested in combat. Later, at the request of a human named Barbara Gordon, Barda joined a team of superheroes known as the Birds of Prey, functioning as a heavy hitter for the team. She got along well with this group by and large, even taking up an interest in Pokemon cards after learning about the game from her teammate Sin, declaring the trading card game worthy of a warrior such as herself. After a few missions, Barda and the others came into conflict with a group of villains called the Secret Six, and Barda once again found herself face to face with Knockout. They engaged in a prolonged, brutal battle, this one ending in a standstill after the teams resolved their differences. When, upon returning from the mission, Barda found Knockout dead, under suspicious circumstances, she rushed home to check in on Scott. Tragically, Barda was then murdered herself by the same person that killed Knockout, a new god called the Infinity Man, who had hoped to kill enough other new gods in an attempt to reorder the cosmos in some way. The Infinity Man's plan ultimately failed, and instead Barda and other new gods killed along the way were reincarnated not long after this at the end of the final crisis. When the world was later reborn in a new 52 orrery of worlds, altered by the Flashpoint event, and a being called Dr. Manhattan, Barda's history on Apocalypse seemed largely unchanged, with most of the details of Barda's origins intact. Barda was heavily involved with the invasion of Earth 2, when Darkseid was given this world as part of a deal with New Genesis. During that invasion, Barda was at first working with Mr. Miracle, and it was clearly stated they had escaped from Apocalypse just like they did in the old world. However, Barda turned on Scott Free and the humans of Earth 2, instead once again siding with Darkseid. The invasion was ultimately successful, but in the final moments before the complete destruction of Earth 2, Barda was beaten by the Earth 2 version of Jimmy Olsen, who had merged with the Mother Box, and was then betrayed by Kalibak, son of Darkseid. Stripped of her armor and badly wounded, Barda managed to finally escape from Darkseid's clutches for good by fleeing on a refugee ship with one of the Furies, a young woman named Clee, and the many humans that were evacuating Earth 2. Barda was also asked to take care of Earth 2 Dick Grayson's son. It should be noted that as a new god, there aren't many alternate versions of Big Barda across the main universe. Many have been seen in other media and alternate timelines with their own history, distinct qualities, and abilities, but by and large, there is only one Big Barda across the 52 Earths. The Earth 2 survivors found a new world to settle on, and Barda left them behind, apparently a changed woman. She was next seen on the Prime Earth at the advent of the Darkside War. By then, Barda and Scott had reconciled with one another, and just like their original counterparts, fell in love and got married. The couple allied themselves with the Justice League in order to protect Earth from being destroyed during the chaos of the war, and worked to end the conflict. They were separated as a result of this event, with Barda leaving to lead the Furies on Apokolips as part of a deal she made so that they would agree to help Earth during the Darkside War. Barda was later seen once again living on Earth, having reunited with Scott, and the pact with the Furies broken under unknown circumstances. At this time, Barda and Scott had a child together, a boy named Jacob, and began raising him on Earth, while they would at the same time regularly engage in battle against the forces of Apokolips on behalf of New Genesis after the two worlds erupted into war. The conflict killed many, including Highfather, Orion, and even Granny. Scott was given control over the forces of New Genesis as a result, and with Barda, they managed to vanquish Darkseid, though by now it was abundantly clear his return is inevitable. And this did not end the war with Apokolips either, as Calabac simply took over after his father was slain. And that's it for Big Barda. She's a really cool character who is interesting right out of the gate thanks to Jack Kirby's run with the initial Mr. Miracle series, which is just full of these amazing creative ideas from start to finish. The second Mr. Miracle series is pretty amazing too, featuring big comic book names like J.M. Matthias, Ian Gibson, Keith Giffen, Len Wein, and Doug Moench, which ran concurrently with the also excellent Justice League International run that features both Barda and Scott. Grant Morrison's JLA, Gail Simone's take on her in The Birds of Prey, and the most recent Mr. Miracle series by Tom King and Mitch Gerads are also definitely worth reading. It's a little weird how different Big Barda is in Earth 2, but I do like it. It makes her break with Darkseid feel less clean, and given how Granny raised the woman from pretty much birth, that feels pretty appropriate. I don't think it would be easy for Barda to just abandon Darkseid in one clean-cut event like she originally did. That being said, it's really not clear how canon all that stuff is for this character. It should be canon because there should only be one version of Barda, just like how there's only one version of Darkseid and Apokolips and all these other new god characters. But after the story in question, Barda and Scott's time on Earth 2 never seems to be mentioned again. I do think the stuff that happens on Earth 2 fits better with the version of Barda we see in the Tom King series, where Barda seems a little more abusive and a lot more traumatized than in her pre-Flashpoint depictions. Given this character's brutal childhood and history, for once I really do prefer the darker take on her character in the modern age, even though I do have a lot of love for her earliest appearances too. It should also be worth reflecting on how great Tom King's story is for this character. From start to finish, it has just a lot of really great moments that say a lot about her. The Furies have a cool issue where they visit Barda when she's giving birth, even though they are at this time on opposite sides of the war. And that scene where Scott and Barda look at the special mirror that shows their bodies with all the injuries they've accrued over the years, and what they would look like without the new god's technology. Tom King's series is unique and distinct from all the other comics with Barda and Scott in them, in that it has all these haunting moments and details that really stick with you, especially with Mitch Gerads' art helping that along in a really surreal and cool way. But it's also kind of made clear that there's something eternal about all of this. The new gods will eventually come back, even the ones that are killed. And all the war stuff has this interesting tone of being morose and pointless. It really goes a long way to inform Barda's character and her perspective on this. Yeah, she's a warrior, and that's kind of what she's all about, but everything human about her is what's really appealing, and you can see why there's so little meaning that they took from their time on Apokolips compared to their time on Earth. As good as the other two Mr. Miracle series are, and a lot of the other New Gods comics from the past, Tom King's is really special to me. But given how much creative force has been behind this character in general, From Jack Kirby to Len Wein to Grant Morrison and then finally Tom King, Barda is easily one of the most consistently well-written characters I've ever done an Origins and Bio video on. She's kind of one of my favorite DC characters, full stop. This character has managed to avoid a lot of the typical traps of female characters who are written like this. Usually they're a lot more generic and just defined by their identity as a warrior. But there's so much more to Big Barda than that, which offers a great deal of value in any given story. The dichotomy of the life she's embraced on Earth against the past, her body, and her abilities makes for a lot of good humor, but also makes for a very interesting character that isn't one-sided and isn't always going to react along the two lines of her life as a superhero and a warrior of apocalypse. Those two motivations and aspects of her character blend well together, and it's hard to predict which of those two defining parts of her are going to come up in any given decision. And because she's almost exclusively been written by excellent writers over the years, her character's been very consistent in that depth in a way that most superhero characters, especially from Marvel and DC, don't benefit from. The only thing that stood out was the Action Comics story with Sleaze that I covered in part 1 of this video. John Byrne wrote that thing, and he actually did write Big Barda and a couple of other stories that I really like. I don't know what was going on here, but it's a really weird story and has a lot of odd implications to it I don't care for, especially in a character like Big Barda. There's actually 2 stories where Barda loses her Mega Rod to another being, and the one where it's just a random human is much better than the one with Sleaze in it, which is strange and disappointing. Especially a story with Superman in it. Superman doesn't come across any better in that story than Big Barda. They're both victims. Like, Superman isn't the jerk in that scene, but I can't believe Superman almost starred in a porn film. Or did. It's kind of implied that he did. That story's really messed up. We might have to talk about that again someday, because I think it's worthy of a whole video about it and getting into it a little bit. But in spite of that one story, Barda's a great character overall, full of hilarious lines and solid moments from her earliest appearances to the most recent, which is why I wanted to take some time to talk about her a little bit. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep reading comics.